Well, Charles, Hong Kong Screwy. Ooh,
Whoa.
I got jammed up on the wires there.
You nearly got
Sorry about
screwed
that.
yourself.
Exactly. We don't want that. Charles, we're appearing at a very special time. It's the Saturday edition of Sunday with Charles.
Just to mix it up. I think, have we done one on every day of the week? We probably have at this point.
Well, I don't
I'm
know.
pretty sure we have.
Well, we could try to do that in the future if you like. That would be something to endeavor to do. But there's so much going on, and it seems like a long time since we did our last regular show. I guess it was just last Sunday, but we missed a few in there. And thank you again, Charles, for participating in that really excellent,
It's my pleasure.
very coursey Christmas. I think people really enjoyed that. I think the social engineers' heads were exploding at the concept of, all those really amazing guests coming together and sharing the information. They really don't like me promoting Dr. Corsi for whatever reason.
Yeah, those roundtables are often a very good thing to do, and I think particularly now that we're in 2020, and we will eventually have some form of a general election contest that people will care about. So to get various and sundry of your friends and perhaps our friends, my friends, back in these periodic roundtables, I think will be quite interesting.
Yes, it was a periodic table of the round, Charles.
There you go.
I think people are also part of the reason I wanted to do this on Saturday is that people don't really know what to think about this whole action in Iraq. Obviously, we come up with the plans for the show sometimes days in advance. Hong Kong Screwy. For people who don't know, this was a cartoon that I watched when I was a kid, Hong Kong Phooey.
Stop, Jason. You're still watching it.
I don't think you can get it anymore. I think it's been relegated to the pile of, racist cartoons. People who aren't familiar with this, Scatman Carruthers played a dog who was a janitor that became a kung fu expert, and I guess it was sort of a play on, weren't there some 70s?
Jackie Chan and
Well, I don't
Bruce
think Jackie
Lee.
Chan was really out yet, but there was some kung fu movies in the 70s that were sort of like a mix of blaxploitation films.
Bruce Lee.
Was he blaxploitation?
I don't know, but there were Bruce Lee. Well, there were often black villains and black.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I think they decided that it was racist against both kung fu and black people, and it's gone.
I think. I mean, some of the stuff I used to watch as a kid is that Heckle and Jekyll and things like that. I mean,
All gone.
well, are they totally gone, or they're just in that graveyard in the sky? They're
Well,
the digital graveyard.
I mean, Heckle and Jekyll were like magpie birds, right? But
Right.
it was something to do with social commentary on what, slavery or?
I don't know. I just think it was at a different period. I mean, I started watching cartoons, I believe, prior to the Civil Rights Act being passed. And so
Yeah.
it was a very different, in the early 60s, a very different time frame, the infancy of television. You go back into some of those old movies. I mean,
Super racist.
oh yeah, who's the Sammy Davis Jr.'s first movie, which if you look it up in Wikipedia, The Boy President, and his mother is played, I think, by a famous white actress in blackface, and it's like a 26 or less than 30-minute movie, and I mean, it would just makes your head explode, thinking that the Hollywood executives of the day would have been able to get such a movie across the line and that there would have been an audience to watch it. I mean, it's out there.
I'm not really finding anything about it, although here's something from the Daily Mail saying that Sammy Davis Jr. was humiliated.
Yeah, I mean, these were, we kind of gloss in bemoaning the fact that there's no progress in America, according to the bug-eyed bartender and Ilhan Harlot, I mean, whatever her last name is, Omar. There's been a remarkable amount of progress in America in the last 20 years, forgetting about going back to the 60 years ago or whatever, to 1959, 1960. When this is referenced, and sometimes progress takes longer because it's worth it taking longer. I mean, it's not necessarily the case that you should rush headlong into some foolish plan like, say, borrowing $93 trillion to fix a Green New Deal. For a Green New Deal, it makes absolutely nothing other than nonsense. So, But it's for another day to go into it, and just to say that the art department does, once again, sometimes simplest is best. And this is really crisp and clean. This could be a whole line of kids, maybe not kids, whole line of, in your den or something like that, pillows to throw against the
Hong Kong screwy pillows.
As you're watching reruns of Sunday with Charles and videos and other things. But anyway.
Right, exactly. So, Charles, you've prepared another presentation for us today. I think we should just get right into it, right?
Yeah, let's dive into it. And so, what we're doing now, we've laid the groundwork here. We're going to get into the list in a second, but this is almost our 200th show. And for the people who are new to Sunday with Charles and new to Crowdsource the Truth, who think that we don't have any details backing our arguments up, I think that is really not the case, that we have a tremendous amount of information linked for you, the viewership, to view and understand yourselves, and then if you agree, spread it around to the crowd and to the wider world. We can start asking some questions from different perspectives now. Like one obvious one is George W. Bush kind of wasn't all that happy with the Clinton family. If we remember what happened, that Bill Clinton stomped all over his dad in '92. Wasn't all that kind to him when he was president, Bill Clinton. I mean, he was always, everything was the Bush-Reagan era's fault. He was going to fix everything. And so one wonders, also while, I guess after George H.W. Bush left the White House, there was an assassination attempt against him in the Middle East.
I say that was all a charade, this whole,
Possibly, but what I'm saying to you is you would have thought, just as Trump is now in the White House, you would have thought that once the President of the United States actually, beats his opponent, his or her opponent, gets inaugurated, finds his feet, because I would guess the first week or so of being President of the United States, you're just checking, don't push that button, Mr. President. You're just
flushing all the toilets in the White House.
You're going down to the bowling alley or whatever, you're scheduling people on the tennis court. I mean, whatever you do in the first week to get to kind of find your feet in the White House. You would have thought that George W. Bush, in 8 years as President of the United States, might have managed to figure out that the Clinton Foundation was a freaking fraud. I mean, in as much as his father had a presidential library, which came together, I believe, on the 6th, it opened around the 6th of November, 1997, one day before Bill and Hillary Clinton selected the location of their presidential foundation, in theory, even though neither of them was an officer or director and the thing hadn't been organized yet. You would have thought that somebody, even though he's not that smart, George W., you would have thought that even he, in 8 years in the White House, during four of which there was an open FBI investigation into the Clinton Foundation, that even he would have said, you know what, there's some potential issues with this Clinton Foundation, and now that I'm leaving office, now that B-Rock has taken over, we have this same transition period. We have this period from the election day of 2008, when, okay, yeah, Barack Obama has won. The Electoral College has to, bless it. He has to get through the process of finding his top-level people. They have to make it, through their FBI checks and their security checks or whatever else, and there has to be a formal inauguration. You would have thought that in that time frame, when Bush was still the president, when he held all the levers of power, when he could do things and get away with them, and there was really not, but what are you going to do, impeach George W. Bush in his last day in office? I mean, there's not really much you could do to a lame duck president unless you're totally vindictive, which is something I think we may find out about in a few weeks. But so if we go back to the...
But just quickly, Charles, before we move off of this image, I really do think that the Bush family and the Clintons have been very close for a very long time. And their work together in Mena, Arkansas, as well as this casual photo at a barbecue. I mean, this is a young, unknown Bill Clinton sitting next to a guy who was the director of the CIA. I mean, they're not related. What the hell is he doing there?
Where is this? Is it in Maine?
Well, it's some barbecue or something. They're sitting around drinking Mountain Dew and beer. This picture also lends credibility to statements made by Chris Gowan, as we see Bill Clinton drinking Diet Pepsi. I'm surprised and a little disappointed he hasn't gotten brain cancer from that yet.
How do we know he hasn't?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I just think any interactions between the Bushes and the Clintons that are less than positive are a charade intended to throw us off the scent.
Yeah, but if we go back, this is a presentation today when we're going to examine in great detail what happened between Barack Obama's election and his inauguration as regards the Clinton Foundation, because there's some new elements that I hadn't actually concentrated upon until the last several days. And they involve Hong Kong. They involve the fact that in this period between the election of 2008 and the inauguration of 2009, of all things, the Clinton Global Initiative, which didn't legally exist anywhere, was allowed to hold its first international annual meeting in Hong Kong. And George W. Bush and his people said, that's okay. So what could go wrong with that? I mean, here we have the incoming Secretary of State, the incoming president with little to no foreign policy experience, frankly, either one of them, and the husband, the notoriously corrupt and suspicious husband, and the former president, who was investigated without success by the House and the Senate for suspicious foreign contributions via China, that this guy, between Barack's election and Hillary and Barack's swearing in separately in high cabinet officials, that Bill Clinton would spirit his team over to communist China and hold a grifter festival in Hong Kong where hundreds of people might swarm all over the Clintons to try to seek advantages through the Secretary of State and through the incoming president. That there was nothing wrong with that. I mean, imagine if Donald Trump had done that. He gets elected in November of 2016. Imagine if he had sent Melania or Ivanka or both of them, over to Hong Kong to have a Trump Foundation international meeting. You would literally have. It happened without this, but I mean, you'd literally, Rachel Maddow's head would just blow up and physically explode.
Too bad.
Maybe they should have done that.
Yeah, you could do that. That would be one method.
But I mean, think about it. George W. Bush did say, wait a minute, my first foreign policy challenge as president. Do you remember what it was, Jason?
Going to Japan to meet Shinzo Abe.
No, the first...
China did something while he was having dinner.
No, you're close. But China, we had a Navy spy plane, I think, in international airspace, and it was forced down by the Chinese government. And our plane was ransacked, and the people were roughed up. That was his first foreign policy challenge, but George W. Bush's first foreign policy challenge.
Oh, W. I thought you were talking about Trump.
No,
yes, I do remember. I thought it was crashed, that plane or something.
It was forced down. It was the first time I learned how you could force down a plane. But that was in, I want to say, April of 2001. It was early 2001 when that happened. So, here's a guy who had his father had been the first, I believe, American ambassador to the People's Republic, or one of the early ones, H.W.
H.W. was?
Yeah.
God, that guy is so crooked.
Yeah, and so the Bush family has long experience in China. And here you have this, incoming, Hillary Clinton's back at the trough again, Bill's back at the trough again. We're going to let them go out to Hong Kong between Election Day and Inauguration Day. And, Bob Mueller, head of the FBI, he didn't say, oh, wait a minute, how are you guys going to do that? So we have some new information about that period, which is really, frankly, disgusting. And it's just so obvious that the thing was an epic fraud, turning into a bigger version of an epic fraud, an international, intergalactic fraud. And so now that we've done so many of these presentations, and well before today, the Trump administration has more than enough ammunition to take these suckers down, to take the people who are exploiting, in quotes, gullible donors around the world, and take the crooked donors among them, take the operators of these charities, take the accounting firms, the law firms, the consultants, the fundraisers, the Clintons, the trustees, take all of these people to town, because we got a massive budget deficit and a massive government debt. We've got to reduce both of those. This is an easy way to do this. Just as Trump is, out of the blue, he didn't even really give a threat, just like, you might want to stop pushing Iran. And next thing you know, the number 2 guy, boom. I think he's in that kind of a firing mood now. We can debate the Iran thing, whether it makes sense. But on the Clinton Foundation, all I can do is talk. All I can do is prod people. All we can do is send these videos out. Right. But prosecutors could do other things. They can have grand juries. They can have indictments. They can win cases. And they could go aggressively against people they think are bullshitting them and trying to hide and dissemble and carry on this conspiracy. So with that, Jason, I think we should just, for your new viewers and listeners, go through this disclaimer that we use. And frankly, we haven't modified it all that much in the time that we've been using it together. This is an effort here that's different, certainly different than Jake Tapper and MSNBC. What's the acronym for MSNBC? There's some. I don't know. I thought it was Microsoft. No, but there's somebody. It'll come to me, but it's pretty amusing. Our approach is a polar opposite to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the conflicted mainstream media. It's to open up people's eyes with evidence that's in the public domain, connect dots for you, give you a chance to join the process of connecting those dots. Dive into these rabbit holes, look at this information that the mainstream press doesn't want you to see. See it for yourselves and come to the conclusions we came to a while back and that we built upon week by week and day by day. There's a lot of information here. We appreciate constructive suggestions, and we get many of them via my website and our Twitter handles. Please do follow Jason and myself. I actually noticed my Twitter followers declined a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of screwing around going on with the social media, Charles. I don't know if we have time for me to describe that today, but perhaps I'll do a separate show about that.
Yeah, I think that deserves a special show because we do have a lot of information today. But if we could show people the playlist.
Certainly. The playlist.
That's the players.
Well, the playlist is a handy-dandy consolidation of all the shows, Charles. Every episode of Sunday with Charles, as well as every episode of Charles Ortella's Closing In, are all in this playlist on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel. People watching our live stream right now would be watching either on the Crowdsource The Truth 2 YouTube channel or Periscope or Facebook or DLive. Of course, we want to welcome our generous sponsors on Subscribestar and Patreon. They're the ones that make this show possible week after week. But people who haven't seen these episodes or perhaps doubt that there is an overwhelming amount of evidence, certainly more than enough to start a complete investigation, to impanel grand juries, should go through each of these videos or even just select any one of them, and you're going to find an astounding array of information. When people click on each of these videos, Charles, and they begin to watch them, they can follow along with the presentations by going down into the video description here. You click on this Show More little hot link, and it's going to give you all the links to the sponsorship sites as well as links to the presentations that you painstakingly craft each week. And people can download those. There's a convenient, the standard kind of download icon right here. You can save it to your computer. You can follow along on screen or print it out and make notes on there. Clamp holes in them and put them in a loose leaf notebook and go to Congress and throw them at somebody. But you can do whatever you want with them. It's your printout once you have it.
Exactly.
And I encourage throwing things at Congress.
Yeah, don't throw things. But I find actually for me, it's just, Jason and I came up with this idea a while back, and so we've been trying to perfect it or improve it every week or every time we do a show. And it's just gotten to a point where it's very helpful to me to have this kind of organized format so that I know approximately how many slides to do each week. I know what's going to be a decent amount, what's going to be too light given the time frame and whatever. Today is going to be a heavier show because we're actually, I know what I want to do a week from tomorrow, and so this is a show designed to lay the groundwork for an expansion of the themes that we're going to get to here. So if we go to the next page, Jason, if you go to the second link of that, there's in here the Zero Hedge one. There is some back and forth as to whether this has actually happened. Zero Hedge is reporting that following the targeting, the execution of Soleimani, that there's now been subsequent airstrikes that are taking out these militia commanders. And my viewpoint on this is that my starting point on this is, and I fully recognize the tremendous sacrifices of not only the fighters and the wounded, the departed, but the families our families and our allies, who have been living with what seems to me to be a perpetual state of war since really we started in Afghanistan in I think late September, early October 2001. It's fair for us across the political spectrum to be tired of this. I mean, it's almost as if the September 11th, 2001 events happened, and the defense contractors around the world have been feasting on this ever since. And our securities, our liberties have been reduced. Technology gets ever more powerful. I'm well familiar with the arguments against continuing this endless war. And I also am very familiar with the idea that it's one thing just to fight and fight forever, but if you don't address the underlying ideology of your enemy, to either understand why you're wrong or to be able to convince the other side why they are wrong, you're just going to be fighting for the sake of fighting. There's something I think fundamentally incompatible between radical Islamic jihadism and ordered life in the West. It's just incompatible. And one of us has got it wrong. I think I know who. But rather than send fighters into the battlefield now for 18, 19 years at the considerable cost that we've borne as a society, shouldn't we have at the beginning gotten into the fact that we've got to convince people on the other side that what they're thinking, that it's okay for you to kill somebody in God's name, because you were told by either a book or some intermediary that that's okay.
Probably a website.
Probably, yeah, it's probably Rachel Maddow.
There's going to be an MSNBC lawsuit coming this way. Charles, we might disagree on this. I'm not convinced that the provocation for this strike was, they tell us, Iranian militia, that something is held up by a suction cup that obviously just failed.
All right.
The hairdryer's in the garbage can now. All right. I'm not convinced that the people who did this rocket attack on the military base that provoked the U.S. to do this are who they say they were. It's just like the gas attack in Syria that prompted a missile strike. I think there's a lot of people who are involved in social engineering our president. And it was interesting to me, the tweet came out from John Bolton right after this. It's like if John Bolton and CNN support what's going on, I immediately take a step back and say, wait a minute.
Yeah, but Qasem Soleimani was a bad dude, and this whole Crowdsource expansionism of Iran around the world, down into South America and Central America, this guy was, and the people working with him were extremely bad actors, and it had the blood of many Americans on their hands, many, hundreds of thousands. Not to mention of many Iranians and Iraqis as well. Now, our hands aren't clean either as America. I mean, we went in there, we
kind
deposed
of destroying the place for 18 years.
Well, before, I mean, we went in and we deposed the Shah, who was our loyal ally. These planes that the Iranians are fighting are F-15s. Where do you think they got them?
Yeah.
From us? I mean, and then we decided that we'd get behind Saddam Hussein and have, 1 million people in Iran die through that. I mean, there's a long, the list of mistakes that we have made in that theater and other theaters is extremely lengthy. So we should be trying to address the situation with humility and with understanding. And I do take your point that humility is not a characteristic that John Bolton has ever had.
Or necessarily Donald Trump.
Or necessarily Donald Trump as well. But, my bottom line, and I actually am probably, I don't know if I'll be invited back on. I've been invited on quite a bit on the Press TV, which is an Iranian private service that under sanctions operates primarily through Facebook and other ways, and not as a typical channel. But I've been telling them for several years on these broadcasts, you are not playing with a winning economic hand in Iran. The economy is a shambles. You're not talking about that many people. The Iranian people have known nothing but despair from 1979 to the present. That's more than one entire generation. People grow up with no hope. I mean, 40 years, most people, that's all the time they work.
Right.
If that.
Right.
So you have many Iranians who've never been able really to function
earn a living or anything.
Yeah, and how can we be saying, as inside Iran, as leaders of that country, that whatever they're doing is working? It's obviously not working. In contrast, the United States, you compare 2019 to 1979, for all our sins and problems, we're a lot better off economically in 2019 than we were in 1979. That's for damn sure.
But Charles, isn't it a little bit like saying we burned their house down, we made them homeless, we destroyed their business, they're laying out in the street, and we're like, what the hell is wrong with you? You got nothing going on.
No, because what I've been saying through in my way, and I believe the Trump people are saying, not necessarily the Obama people in the same way, there's a simple path here. For all the problems that Iran has, it also has a rich and far longer than the United States history, many cultural accomplishments, many smart people, many advanced ways of thinking. If we could decouple from the war mode and get back into a peace mode, as worked for a time with its failings in Iran under the Shah, if we could get back to a secular state, perhaps, in Iran, then we might have a tremendous amount of progress that could happen suddenly, because there are a lot of Persian or Iranian people left and are flourishing here in America.
Moved to L.A.
Moved to L.A. is a very popular one. New York is very popular. Florida, Texas are all popular. And I know a lot of these people, and I mean a number of these people anyway, and they tell me they'd love to go back. They'd love to see conditions change, and capital would come flooding back into that country, and I think it would have a lot of potential. And so I think the message that's being sent, we know that's a message being sent to North Korea. I mean, what the hell are you guys doing in North Korea? There's no electricity, there's nothing, and this is obvious, this is a hermit kingdom, but it's one thing to be a hermit as as Hugh Hefner in his in Hef's mansion. That's what. But
why leave home?
Right, but to be a hermit in a cave, where it's cold and there are lots of rats and bugs. I mean, that's not a good plan.
Not so good.
Yeah. So moving away though from these recent developments, because we're not really today going to focus too much on Iran. This conservative treehouse, for people who do not read this on a daily basis, I highly recommend it. This is a long article, and Sundance is one of I think the better poster. I don't know if that's a collection of people or whatever, but what they're arguing, which I think is very sensible, and it's a long, long piece, I won't try to do it justice in my summary, is that the game here is not to impeach Donald Trump. The game here is to get down a process, which they're now on, where they can either legitimately get the grand jury information out into the public.
There is no legitimate way.
There's the cover of a legitimate way. If you could get a dirty set of judges to okay the release, right? Then for a time, in the second that you got them the okay to release the stuff, it would flood into the public domain, and then you continue to litigate it, and then the Supreme Court would say that wasn't right. The damage would have been done. So they're either going to leak it out through the, quote, legitimate court process, or they're just going to leak it out.
I love how your explanation of the legitimate process, step one is you got to get a dirty judge. That's not legitimate.
Quotes legitimate.
But just to clarify for people who might not understand, the grand jury information is secret and not to be released because the grand jury is impaneled by a very low threshold of suspicion. And when they investigate all this stuff, like for instance, our friend Dr. Corsi, there's a lot of information about him that was found to not rise to the level of actually indicting
Right.
and going through with court stuff. So that information is expunged as not valid. If they bring it out now in the news and everything, it's going to have the effect of indicting somebody in the court of public opinion with information that's not sufficient to actually indict. So it needs to be protected.
Right, if we scroll, you're right, absolutely right. If we scroll down this, there's a sinister organization, I only just read about it here, or maybe you know about it already. It's either called Security Justice or Justice Security. It's if you go down this a little ways, it's, yeah, justsecurity.org, okay? And
Ooh, at NYU Law.
the Reese Center, yeah. And you look down the number of people who are involved. These are all former Obama people and a lot of nasty people are involved in this thing. So they've got the lawfare approach with Ben Wittes. They now have this thing, justsecurity.org, where they're leaking as much as possible information they believe will be damaging. Yeah, you look at the advisory board.
So this is all happening in New York at NYU. I'll go check this thing
Yeah,
out.
nearby.
I mean, if they're lawyers demanding that they release grand jury information, that's like doctors demanding that they kill patients.
Yeah, they know how to do that.
I can't get behind that. Who's this Ambassador Keith Harper? What's the ambassador to?
Probably too.
Ambassador, permanent representative of the UN Human Rights Council. Maybe he knows the doctors who want to kill the patients. What's with all those ambassadors?
But this is a whole team of swamp lovers, frankly, that is determined to, they're using the end justifies the means approach to this attack, which I think is, Sundance is doing us a favor here. Jake Sullivan,
Who's he?
he was deputy chief of staff to Hillary Clinton.
Oh,
He's a despicable human being.
Oh,
He's
and
at the
look-
center of the whole efforts to cover up what happened in Benghazi.
security advisor to Joe Biden,
Yeah,
who's
he's a
very
douche.
insecure right now with all of his...
He's a douche. And I mean, you see him all over. He's the dean of the toilet bowl server system up in Chappaqua.
Well, was he the director of policy planning at the State Department when Benghazi blew up?
Yes,
Okay, so this is obviously
a
not...
douche.
Yes. That's not my kind of guy.
Yeah. So if we go back into the slides, then we also have from the same conservative treehouse, we have on Friday there were arguments in several D.C. courts dealing with trying to get this information, the grand jury information we were just referring to, and the question arose. Judges were pushing both sides. The judges supposedly are really trying to do good work here. We'll see if that actually happens. But the counsel for Nancy Pelosi suggested that they may have to go back to the old days, 1930s or before, where if there's a dispute, the sergeant of arms for the House would arrive at the Department of Justice with guns.
That's crazy.
And seize the material.
Come on now.
Yeah, I mean, but if that really happened, I mean, there should be a sanity check for Nancy Pelosi. I mean, I wonder if are they just keeping her in the back room, the Hillary Clinton approach, and just whatever pleases her she's got, and then these aggressive lunatics are going into court, taking positions that are on their face laughable. Right?
That's not laughable. That sounds dangerous.
Well, I mean, the notion that any kind of precedent where grand jury information, which people acknowledge, can contain completely false information, that grand jury information should be turned into the public domain in the midst of a political contest.
Under the threat of death.
Yeah, that's out there. I mean, where is this tolerance that, I mean, I thought animated the progressive and liberal wings of political thinking? And the whole idea was, our ideas may be a little wacky, but you should be tolerant of us. Be tolerant of the minority. Now these people are saying, we're in control in the House, we're the majority, we've got our spiked heel on your neck, and now we're going to take out a gun and shoot you in the face so that we can go after your family. That's just outrageous stuff. So then this woman, Evelyn Farkas, is a name I had noticed, was involved, it's an interesting picture to see here, was involved in the Obama era with the State Department. Here's a picture of her in a Burisma jacket. Now, I don't know if this
Ooh.
conservative U.S. site, I don't know much about it yet, but it seemed to me to be a good story, a good long story.
Wow.
And this woman, it seems there was a battle going on in Ukraine where money was involved. George Soros had money on the table, others had money to make and to lose in Ukraine. And there are too many dirty State Department people, many of whom seem to be connected either to Obama or to McCain or to Kerry or to all three.
Or this Atlantic Council.
The Atlantic Council, yeah, exactly. This woman, believe it or not, Evelyn Farkas, is running for office in Congress to take Nita Lowey's seat, which is the district in Westchester where Hillary Clinton lives, and she is running unopposed.
Oh boy.
You know, I mean,
Maybe I should move to Westchester.
I think maybe you should move to Ukraine.
Too late. Oh no, I don't want to live in Ukraine. Well, I mean, that's troubling, Charles. People should also remember that the Atlantic Council, one of the fellows at the Atlantic Council is Dmitry Alperovitch, the chief technology officer of CrowdStrike, the only group to investigate the DNC server that they determined was hacked by the Russians.
Right. Oh, yeah. So no conflict there.
Yeah.
And of course, Paul Pelosi. We're going to find out more and more about him when the famed Giuliani dossier arrives.
Oh, this is the fake Jared Kushner saying, looking flash in that Burisma gear. That's unbelievably brazen.
Yeah.
Has he got a Burisma glove there? What does that say?
Can't tell.
He's saying, smell the glove.
Looks like a Domino's
What's
pizza
wrong
thing.
with being sexy? It looks like an Enron logo.
It does.
It looks like.
Yeah.
It's the exact logo of Enron. This is the next cash theft to see there. All right. Well, anyway, Charles, that's a very interesting little piece for us to examine.
Good. Then there's this Federalist is a great operation here, and what people are doing is going through the latest I.G. Horowitz report and are finding that, you know, basically more and more of even what was in the Horowitz. This Margot Cleveland is a great writer. She's really digs in and gets to the bottom of things. But basically, the applications that were put in to spy on Carter Page, and by that means to spy on the Trump campaign, and then to spy on really the transition, are so outrageous. I mean, again, imagine if George W. Bush, this is the same time frame as we're going to talk about in a second with Hong Kong Screwy. Imagine if George W. Bush, in the waning days of October 2008, when it became clear before then, frankly, that John McCain had as much chance of being president of the United States as he did of having a decent reputation at this stage in his life, you know, when it was obvious that Obama was going to win, and I would argue that was before September of 2016, when the markets really started cratering. And people were saying, well, we've had enough. We got wars everywhere. We got the economies blowing up. We're getting hurt with our pocketbooks. Time for a change. We may not like Democrats, but, you know, we got to try something different than this Bush crowd, because this is a disaster. So imagine if George W. Bush and his team had said, you know what we're going to do now is we are going to render it impossible for Barack Obama to govern for 4 years, and when we get him impeached and kick his ass out before the 2012 election. Imagine, you know, how the mainstream press would have dealt with that. And here, these moves that it appears the Obama team did take against Trump really rise to a level where I think they're capital crimes. People should be put to death.
I agree, but
For some
will that
reasons.
happen, you think, Charles?
I don't know how far up the chain it would go. I know one head that's hanging out there, about
Brennan?
6'8" off the ground,
Comey?
Mr. Comey.
Yeah. That would be a nice indictment.
We have, this is interesting, this part 38 just dropped.
Oh wow! The hits just keep coming, Charles.
And if you can go into the actual main one so that we can.
Is that up here?
Yeah, no, I think you've got it there. Actually, if you go to like the next, you got to scroll on the right hand. Yeah, you'll see there's a lot of keep going down a little bit. You have
It's
to,
all redacted, Charles.
yeah, but you get to, it's about a Pakistan, yeah, stop for a sec here. It says, Office of the Special Representative of Afghanistan and Pakistan. People want comments on this memo. Here, Chris Levine will take some clean, hard copies to the Le Pain Quotidien.
That's like a fast food
In
restaurant.
other words, this is a classified document.
They're just going to be having lunch at Le Pain Quotidien.
What do you want with your brioche? You want some extra? Do you want skim with
That's
your
just
latte?
like a coffee restaurant chain.
Well, right, but why are they dropping this now? October 4th,
I guess
2009.
they're on to Paul's. They can't do it at Paul's anymore.
But you look at this, this is Richard Holbrooke on this list. This is October 4th, 2009. Jake, is that Jake Sullivan?
Tapper?
Jake Sullivan.
Oh, right.
It is Jake Sullivan. This is the guy we were
The
just
guy
talking
we were just looking at.
Yeah. Jake, attached are Paul Jones and my changes to your great cover memo. Chris Levine will take some clean, hard copies to Le Pain Quotidien. In other words, here we have a confidential memo that we're going to drop off to who's going to get that memo at Le Pain Quotidien. Is it Sidney Blumenthal, perhaps, or somebody outside the food chain? And this was just dropped on Friday.
Man.
This thing. Now, it goes further down. There's a big reveal at the very end of it. At the very end of the whole drop.
Well, I tell you, Charles, coffee fans in Washington, D.C. should be on the lookout for swamp critters.
That's right. If you could go all the way to the very back. It's only page 58 or something like that. Okay, here's this internal memo. If we go to, it's the final page. Yeah, sorry. Peter Stroke.
Oh.
Okay, if we go to the beginning of it, of the memo, or let's see. This is, no, it's further down. You want to go all the way to the very end.
What is that, Comey? No.
Further down, all the way to the very, very end. There's a final memo from the great Peter Stroke.
The great. What does he do now for a living?
He contemplates his navel, I think.
That's pretty lucrative.
Is this, in which, yeah, keep going up a little bit. All right. For the Assistant Director, CIA for Counterintelligence, right? Keep going up. So letterhead memo. Attention, Peter Strzok. Section Chief, CD4 Counterintelligence Division. This is LHM, FBI LHM, letterhead memo dated 2nd June 2016. Where is that memo?
Is it attached?
No, it's not, we haven't seen it yet. But this is a month before Hillary's cleared. Okay? Please address all correspondence concerning this matter to the for the Assistant Director, CIA for Counterintelligence. So the CIA is coordinating with the FBI. Peter Stroke's all into this.
Wow.
June 2nd, 2016, before Crossfire Hurricane begins, right?
Yeah.
And what was the need for Peter Strzok to coordinate with high-level CIA people on mishandling of classified information if there was no classified information that they were worried about? Why would there be such active coordination, right? And we know that, because we have done show after show on this, that there were of the known emails back and forth that were turned over, there are thousands of emails, and a smaller number of the highest known security classification, which I think is SAP. And absolutely she was mishandling classified information. But now this has dropped 38 of an investigation that was, as Hillary's people like to say way back then, this is part of a normal security review. Every other Colin Powell did it. But, why are you looking at it?
It's like the thickest file at the FBI.
Right. So this is hysterically funny. Remember the guys who punked Adam Schiff?
Oh yeah, those Russian comedians.
Yeah, they did the same to Maxine Waters.
Well, they're picking all the smartest people, so that's good.
She took a call from somebody who pretended to be Greta Thunberg.
Oh my God.
I mean, how do you let a congressman take a call from that person?
I mean, wouldn't something like that be so coordinated? Like, that is some good phone pranking to be able to pull that off.
That's right. Yeah. You do that. You do that kind of stuff in college. I did something similar to that in college.
She's calling from a 1982 cell phone.
Right. And she can't get up. Help! I'm falling and I can't get up.
Oh boy, man.
Well, that was Maxine Waters. Okay.
Yeah, she's not that sharp.
Then you saw this great. Next one down. This great op-ed from Blagojevich.
I did not see that.
Democrats would have impeached Lincoln. But it
Wait a
does.
minute, isn't this guy in jail?
Yeah, he's been in jail.
Oh, he's writing op-eds from jail.
In the Hill.
Oh, God, that's not good. Why do they want to publish that, Charles?
Well, I mean, I think it's a fair question, just as, why is Assange still in jail? Is a fair question of, what really happened in this whole Blagojevich thing. I believe what happened is that Blagojevich and his people definitely tried to sell the Senate seat that was being vacated by the president-elect, Barack Obama. And the questions I have include how many people around Barack Obama knew this? I mean, it wasn't, and was this the first time it happened, and how many previous incarnations had this been happening in Illinois and elsewhere around the country? So I think that Blagojevich knows a hell of a lot more than he has revealed publicly. I don't doubt that he fears for his life. And I also don't doubt that he's being paid to shut up. So I would have thought that if we're willing to pay, people who come out of the woodwork of the Middle East, 20 million here and 50 million there to talk, I would have thought that to get to the bottom of what really happened in this crucial period we're now going to talk about, the transition period between really June 2008 through January 20th, 2009, what dirty set of deals were struck between Hillary Clinton, the Clinton people, and the Obama people, and how many other people knew about the dirt, and what was the real source of the dirt? What was the leverage that the Clintons had against the Obamas? What was the counter leverage that the Obamas had against the Clintons? And who negotiated and brokered this truce? And how much power does that person, John Podesta, have? Well, did I mention his name? Anyway.
But wait a minute, if Blagojevich is in jail, are they paying him like in cigarettes and toilet wine?
No, I'm sure they say, you're going to keep your mouth shut, you're going to serve your term, you're going to wait till this plays out, and when you
kill him in jail.
Well, he probably has dirt on other people, but you'll get a check over here, or you'll get an account over here, or your family will be looked after, or
be on CNN after you get out, or you could work
with Andy McCabe, from McCabe and Blagojevich.
Yeah.
So, but in this coming week, we got a couple of things that are really going to pop out of the woodwork beyond what you and I are spending most of our time on. One is the trial of Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
And I got to believe, the impeachment trial will be interesting, but this trial of Weinstein,
it's getting worse all the time.
It's getting worse all the time. He tried this Weinstein is using a walker he doesn't need, whereas Bernie Sanders is out there on the campaign trail with Joe Biden
without a walker,
and they need walkers.
They need
they need campaign walkers. But and I really do think, and Hollywood infinitely better than I do. So there's a collection of people who swarm to Hollywood because they know the deal is crooked. They know that at a certain level to get an acting position or whatever, yeah, maybe there's a great, they're the exceptional actors that come along, but for a lot of the roles, what difference does it make? Right?
I mean, most of the crookedness that I experienced in Hollywood had to do with people kind of like, adding things to budgets and charging for things that didn't need to be charged for, and having money added for them and stuff like that. I guess I'm not, appealing enough on any level for anybody to want to abuse me in that way. So, sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's not funny. But it's well known that with actresses and people like Harvey Weinstein, I mean, I've told the story. I experienced the guy being abusive just to people in a restaurant. So he's obviously not a nice guy.
Right. And so, this trial of Weinstein, I mean, it deserves intense focus. The victims deserve their day in court here. And also, I hope there are not instances where he's falsely accused, because that's also bad as well. But this will suck up a lot of the oxygen in the first quarter and beyond. And it'll be interesting to see how the great scolds of Justice Kavanaugh, how high their pitch is on this Harvey Weinstein deal, and whether they can reconcile the positions they took on Kavanaugh with, a real case here of serial abuse, criminal serial abuse, which probably is continuing even as we speak. Like Epstein, who apparently was having young girls.
You mean Weinstein is still doing it, or other people are?
Weinstein is still doing it. I've not people like this. I mean, how old is he now? Is he in the late 60s?
I mean, you'd think you'd be a little preoccupied with the whole court case and everything. But
Epstein got his cushy deal, deferred prosecution agreement, whatever. He was down in the Palm Beach jail, when he wasn't
having dates,
breaking them like Girl Scout uniforms or whatever, like little kitty underwear stuff. I mean, the guy. Once you get to the level of a Weinstein and an Epstein doing this for decades, it's
I think when somebody operates so far outside the realm, I mean, you can't put yourself in the head of a murderer or a rapist or this kind of thing, because the behavior just doesn't make sense. It can't really be reconciled or understood.
But then we also have this issue of Epstein, and Epstein apparently on Sunday there's going to be a 60-minute special, and I don't particularly like 60 Minutes. I don't like their approach where they film you first and then they edit it back together. So who knows what this thing is really going to say. But the summary that is made available to the New York Daily News, published here, is that the way in which his body was moved violated. What was in compliance with prison guidelines?
Yeah.
Do prison guidelines matter anymore?
So that's the new evidence that they weren't. I mean, see, this is the type of thing. I don't trust the Daily News with regard to anything, but certainly not with regard to Epstein. It's linked to Maxwell, Murdoch, all that. It seems the New York Post and the New York Daily News have been very involved in spreading disinformation about Epstein.
And if you go to the top here, Jason, of this article, I also noticed there's an ex-Fox News reporter, Courtney Friel, claims Donald Trump invited her to do what?
To Trump Tower to kiss. But they left out my ass.
I've never heard of Courtney Friel.
You probably will now.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Anyway, who knows, Charles? Everybody has the right to be whatever.
Good. Well, let's move along then. So, if we can go to the next page. Mm-hmm. All right. Before we get into this Hong Kong Screwy, I want to set the stage and give people some information. We've been over this information in prior broadcasts, but I wanted to bring it back home for folks. Back in 1988, when the first signs emerged that the Berlin Wall was going to come down, Eastern Europe was going to be liberated, maybe the Soviet Union would fall apart, maybe China would change its approach and decide to enter...
Just shoot people in the streets.
Market-based, no.
That's the same approach.
We'll get to that in a second. But you look at these numbers, and in China's case, the average person in China for all of 1988, now 1988 was a year when the economy was actually doing pretty well, but the average person in China spent $178 a year.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's nothing. That's not even $20, it's $15 a month.
How can they buy food?
Right, and India was actually better. They were spending $20 a month. So you slap them together, and they're down there. That's the average. That's in total. You're talking about 2 billion people were living on, call it $15 a month each, back in 1988. And you're not going to sit there as maybe some dumbass or Duma strategic planner is going to sit there and say, you know what? Let's put together a Lamborghini factory and we can sell Lamborghinis in China and India. I mean, these people are spending $200, $15 a month.
It'd be a risk to open a McDonald's 99-cent value menu.
Right. So the game in 1988 and ever since has never been to sell products and services into China. It has always been, in my mind, to put pressure, to encourage these 2 billion workers to compete against American labor, to bring the cost of American labor down. And so you look at these, people talk about imbalances. It was $200 in total per month, per year, for 2 billion people in China and India. We jokingly call it Chindia. Then 10 years later, Bill Clinton's president, it's only $300. It's not even $30 a month per person. 2008, when Obama comes in, it's still less than $100 a month, $80 a month per person. At this point, it's 2.6 billion people. And the most recent data we have now, 2017, it's roughly $200 a month consumption. So this is these internal markets, and this understates the severity of the problem. It understates it because there is a segment in China and India that does better, disproportionately better. So a small percentage of China...
Better than the United States?
No, better than the bottom people in China and India. So the real situation is there are pockets in China and India that, yeah, they could start to buy Lamborghinis and stuff, very small number of people. But you adjust this. This is done on an average basis, and you say, all right, what share of consumption do the rich people take in these time frames? Let's say it's 35%. The top 10% of the population consumes 35% of the consumption. These numbers skew even worse for the meat of the market. So you look at this and you compare it to the United States. In the United States in 1988, the average person consumed more than $1,000 a month, the average person, right? Now in
That's including your rent, food, everything, car, everything?
Consumption is spending on food, healthcare, stuff you need to live. The average person was spending, across our great country in 1988, $1,000, more than $1,000 a month, whereas in Chindia, it was $16 a month.
That's amazing.
Right? And then by 2017, the average person, this includes babies, this includes people who are 90 years old, spending, call it $3,500 a month. The average person is spending that in the United States.
That baby's a high roller.
Right. So the consumption of people in this Chindia, 2% per capita in 88, and now only 6%. So yeah, it's tripled. That's a big thing. That's fantastic. But there's still, the markets are not developed yet in China and India as a place where we can hope to export high value-added products for the consumer. You can export power plants. You can build fake cities. You can build airports.
What about agriculture they're talking about?
You can export that kind of stuff. But the point is, this has been sold, by the people in the business roundtable and by the Duma politicians and the NGOs and all this kind of stuff. This is a great place. China and India, it's the future. They've arrived. America's the distant past. We're on the bullshit.
Yeah.
Our market is the most interesting market right now for across the spectrum. People who are trying to sell goods and services. They're going to sell them in the United States, and at higher price points, they're definitely going to sell more complicated products and services in the United States well before a bigger market emerges in China and India than currently exists today. So this whole idea of unregulated globalism, in my mind, in the beginning, was intellectually flawed, just as radical Islamic jihadism is intellectually flawed. The idea that you would lull, the voter into believing that we're doing this because what we want to do is have your factory in Iowa ship more stuff over to China and India. That's why we're doing this. No. We're doing this because we want to shut your freaking factory down. We want to make all this stuff over in parts of India and China where no one enforces the rules. And yes, so we're going to fire you expensive workers. We're going to terminate your pensions. We're going to get rid of, we're not going to clean up the site that we messed up for the last 100 years. We're just going to set up a new greenfield thing over here. And China and India are not going to enforce environmental rules. We'll be able to keep the prices low. And we'll turn around and have Chinese slave labor and machines manufacture products that, yes, will cost less than you'd have to pay today in Iowa. But, at what cost to society are we going to do this? And who's going to benefit from all this? The people who are going to benefit are the Rockefellers, people like the Rockefellers, George H.W. Bush, many other people who are fine with letting the very rich become even richer. And there's a lot wrong with this whole calculation. Forgetting it before you even get to the moral arguments for, is this the right thing to consider even thinking about, let alone doing? And this is where I would like to introduce something that's kind of shocking. And that is that this just in that I sent you.
Oh, right.
Right.
Well, you mentioned a minute ago, Charles, the Business Roundtable. That's something that Jan Weinberg had spoken to me about. That's a pretty sinister, that's essentially like a corporate think tank, right? That's a pretty sinister thing.
Sinister, it's basically the big company chief executive officers and directors and investors
Making
in them.
Government policy in
Trying
their
to,
favor.
it's an old concept, but it's sinister in the sense that they haven't thought a lot of this stuff through properly. And it's an avenue for purchasing influence. Now I had heard about this in the past. This is a Washington Examiner. This person, Ethan Gutman, has been writing about the issue of organ harvesting in China and elsewhere. Notice this article is dated November 24th, 2008. This is precisely the time that we're talking about Hong Kong Screwy. Okay? So you go back to this, you don't have to flip to the slides, but this is a gripping article. It's a very lengthy article. And, I don't like to even think about organ harvesting, but we'll spend a few minutes on it. You go to those numbers. We were talking about 2 billion people in 88, rising to 2.5 billion people in China and India, an increase of 500 million people by 2017, and the endemic poverty in China and India that still exists. So you look at that and you say, these people, on the one hand, they can't afford to buy anything, right? The total consumption, their total spending for consumption is $15 a month. On the other hand, there are sick people, wealthy sick people around the world who would like to extend their lives for another 10 years or 25 years, and they will pay $115,000 for a liver or X for a kidney or cornea. If you believe that a market for this, for human parts, will not develop, then you're in the same camp who think that if we just make it impossible for everybody to have guns, criminals won't find them. Of course, there's a human condition as such. You create these huge imbalances. You're creating a market. There's literally a market for body parts, and you've got an environment in China and these poorer countries, and in the United States, quite frankly, as well, where people will to jump to the front of a line. They are, if it's to say extend their lives and they're a billionaire or they're rich, they're going to do this. And they're going to find a way to cover it up. So one of the reasons that I think, and it wasn't the founding fathers who organized the charity law, because that was really last put back together in 1969, one of the reasons that charity laws are so insistent that American charities, which are supposed to be doing only lawful work, be tightly controlled from a domestic base if they're going to engage in international activities, is that a charity can be used to cover up organ harvesting and drug running and human trafficking. And this is a problem. Who knows whether this particular reporter has got it exactly right? Maybe this particular reporter who focuses on this Falun Gong religion, and maybe he's gotten bad sources, but when you read through this very lengthy article, I think it's safe to assume that there is an organ harvesting problem, and it is unlikely to have been done in any way close to an appropriate way in China, and that if the Clintons had anything to do with this, you could be sure mayhem has only ensued from their being involved with it. So we're now going to tell you a story which is backed up by abundant evidence of how a Little Rock-based presidential archive that was supposed to only operate and solicit funds to hold the presidential records of Bill Clinton in Little Rock somehow got involved in a hospital where prisoners who, in theory, were HIV/AIDS afflicted and were using drugs, were somehow being, quote, helped by this Clinton Foundation that had no authority to do any international work anywhere in the world. Okay? So the article I just showed you was the 24th of November, 2008. On the 16th of November 2008, if you could hit this link, Jason, this is one of 3 versions of the MOU.
Oh, yeah.
That this is the one provided to Tom Fitton in December of 2013. And if you go to the very bottom, this is the one that we decided, I think, in our last broadcast is obviously slapped together and has all kinds of problems. This article, this appears to be have been signed on the 16th of November, 2008. And it appears maybe to have been signed by Valerie Jarrett. But the question
I just noticed something else about this, Charles.
What's that?
Well, maybe we noticed this before, but look at how sharp the text is here and how blurry it is on the signature.
Right.
And it's blurry around. See, Valerie is sharp, Jarrett is not.
It looks to me like this was stuck in there.
Correct.
But here's and this also looks, this is clearly different. The date is different than that. And if you had, I'm sure there are people, the presidential looks all screwed up, right?
Well, it's just the amount of fuzz, the amount of JPEG artifacts around the signature does not at all match the amount of JPEG artifacts around the text. They've come from 2 different documents and been joined together here.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. But nonetheless, this is the one that is signed the 16th of November, 2008, or dated the 16th of November. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I just want to real quick. That'll help.
16th of November, 2008. Okay? So if we go back into the slide, that document states, well, first of all, it's an MOU, and for people who are not familiar with this work, a memorandum of understanding is what you enter into when you don't want to agree to do anything,
right.
Because it's not an agreement. It's not, by design, it is legally unenforceable. Right?
Non-binding.
There's no point in doing it. I mean, if you're trying to nurse somebody towards a deal, you can try to get them to sign something like this and then try to, use moral suasion to say, well, you did sign the MOU, now let's move to a contract. But when it gets to a litigation, and I'm not practicing law here, I'm just based on my experience, an MOU is about as meaningful as a commitment to action is of the Clinton Global Initiative, in that both are totally meaningless. Right? So in this MOU, it says a single entity. All right, that's one of the, I think that's in the section 1. Just that first phrase, a single entity, is a bold-faced lie. There's no single entity here. There are multiple entities. There's an entity in England we haven't talked about yet. There's an entity in India, multiple entities in India and South Africa and Africa and the Bahamas and elsewhere. So the notion that this thing is just a single entity is wrong. William J. Clinton Foundation has not, as of November 16th, 2008, or the effective date, December 12th, 2008, has not adopted bylaws ever, has not registered lawfully ever, is therefore not a 501c3 charitable organization. And these various initiatives, the only one that could in theory be argued as being legitimate is the Presidential Library. Every other one of these things is outside the scope of its authorized tax-exempt purpose. So this whole paragraph is wrong. And then at the time this was put together, this supposed MOU, if we could just go back in.
I don't know why that happened.
Yeah. I've listed out, for the years that matter, there are 11 years, right, by the time they put this together. And they have not managed to file a complete and truthful return to the IRS in any year. They haven't gotten an audit in any year, and they haven't provided disclosures concerning their government grants in any year. So they've gotten an F in every major thing, element that you would want to be graded. It's F, maybe F minus, G, Z, double Z minus. And Valerie Jarrett, in theory, is a lawyer. And in theory was being represented by someone. We're going to get to that in a second. But you look at this, and this was clearly put together by people who thought they would never get caught, that no one would ever go back and take a look at this. This is a tissue of lies. This is bullshit. None of this is true. And here you have, remember, this is the same transition period. You have this historic election of the first African-American person to become president of the United States. Now it's 10, 12 days later, or whatever, I forget the date, I think it was the 3rd or something, a number of days later, and they're trying to put together, one of the most important issues is how are we going to manage this question of Hillary Clinton being Secretary of State while her husband is running around the world running the Clinton Foundation? How are we going to get this done? I know what we'll do. We'll come up with a meaningless piece of bullshit and hope that no one ever finds out about it, and then just stuff the world and resist and resist and resist. Does this seem to you like it may be one of the things that the Obama administration and Brennan and Comey and the Clintons are trying to make sure the American people doesn't find out about, because it calls into question the entire nativity story about the Obama administration? What was really going on? Why would the incoming president of the United States agree to let the Clintons off the hook with this garbage? Having been humiliated by the New Yorker magazine cover and Bill Clinton's comments in South Carolina, now you're going to be the president of the United States, and you're going to let this kind of charade continue? The only reason you would do that is if the Clintons have bigger dirt on you than you have on them. And that dirt must be very big indeed for the incoming president of the United States to say, even though on January 20th, 2009, I'm going to control the military, I'm going to control the CIA, I'm going to control a lot of things, I'm going to have, he could in theory have done that. I am going to be intimidated by these Clintons.
I don't think the president controls the CIA,
but you know what I'm saying. It's better than being an out-of-work president.
Right.
Right. So you look at this. That dirt, whatever the Clintons had on the Obamas, has got to be major.
Down low club.
Let's keep going.
Next slide.
Yeah. All right. So slightly before this time frame, going back into September 23rd to 26th, I think, or thereabouts, there was a big announcement that the Clinton Global Initiative was going to happen. Now remember these dates, September 23rd, 26th. This is just when Carter Page, they're going after Carter Page. They've tried to file on Carter Page. They don't know what to make yet of Donald Trump. Is he going to get across the line? Is he not? They have the Access Hollywood tape ready to go. They think their October surprise is ready to go, but they have this meeting in New York City, the Clinton Grifter Initiative, at a time when, again, there's no such thing as the Clinton Global Initiative. The Clinton Foundation had not registered in New York under the name William J. Clinton Foundation yet. They announced that there's going to be this thing, CGI International. Now remember, have you heard the name before? Victor Pinchuk. Ever heard that name?
Ukraine.
He's the convening partner of CGI International.
Interesting.
Okay, a series of meetings that's going to start in Hong Kong in December. And then we're going to have some fun with Mr. Vinod Sekhar. We're going to ask the question whether Ortel's first law is going to work on this gentleman, Vinod Sekhar. Here's a very nice press release in the middle of a heated election campaign. These people have nothing but public service and the best intentions towards humanity at large, decide that one of them is going to be the convening partner of CGI International, and the other is going to underwrite the festivities in Hong Kong. None of these people, Pinchuk wouldn't have any interests he wanted to protect in the Ukraine. He wouldn't want to be doing that and buying influence with the next president of the United States. And this Vinod Sekhar, he's just a choir boy. I mean, he's doing this because he's a young guy and he's made a lot of money and he just wants to help, right? And you look at this quote that in the past, CGI people have made 1,000 commitments to action that are worth $30 billion. That's a lot of money to help the lives of 200 million people in 150 countries. Why don't you focus on China and India? I mean, why would you spend a lot of time and effort trying to make lives better for 200 million? We just got through telling everybody that conditions in China and India are really bad.
Yeah.
Why would you set up an organization that would make all it's rubbish? And then you look at the number of people who signed up for this garbage. September 23rd, 26th, Bill and Melinda Gates, the Broad Foundation, Citibank. By the way, at this time, the financial markets are melting down, remember, just in this time frame. And these people are having a gab fest in New York to try to work with a foundation that doesn't exist to do stuff that isn't even typical charity work. Harvard and Yale don't ask you, when they ask you for money, they don't say, hey, Charles, why don't you get your parents to make another commitment to action to Yale? No, they want fucking cold hard cash. You don't ask for a commitment to action, so you could then put on a play or a podcast and say, I've just committed to do something that I might never do, but I want the credit for it.
Well, look at Bill Clinton and Victor Pinchuk, and someone who's obviously more interesting to Bill Clinton than Victor Pinchuk.
Exactly.
It's pretty telling photograph, don't you think, Charles?
I think he's got certain ideas on the menu there. And then you look further down the media partner section. If you can just move it down the slide a little bit. Notice here that CNBC signed up to be the official media partner. And I like Maria Bartiromo. I know it's name dropping to say I've been on air with her quite a few times. She's a very smart person, but she was duped here. GE/she were duped because there was no Clinton Global Initiative. And how can I be so sure of that? Let's hit that link. All right, this is a site in New York where you can put in any name you want. Let's put in Clinton Global Initiative. And you got to put it in the name type. It has to be.
What did I do wrong?
It's fine. No, I thought you'd already done it. Yep, that's good. And then the name type's got to be all or something. It's all. And then you got to type in 11364 364. Oops. And then we'll search the database and see, was there anything by the 2008? Just hit that global initiative. When did it register? April 12th, 2011. Okay, they held one in 2008, obviously. We just got through talking about it. 2009, 2010. They had formed the entity, the new Clinton Global Initiative, Inc., was incorporated on September 4th, 2009. But they didn't freaking get around to filing in New York State until 2011. And their attitude is like, we moved from Arkansas with a gigantic slime ball, and we put it in here in New York, and we're now going to slime all of New York. Former, senator from New York, Secretary of State, we're just going to do this Clinton Global Initiative in New York, and we're not going to do we don't do the rules. Those don't apply to us. So let's see if the rules apply to William J. Clinton Foundation. Go back, and we substitute William J. Clinton Foundation, and see if it had bothered to register by, and I think it may work again just by hitting.
Probably need a new CAPTCHA.
No, because it didn't bother to register. Ever. Okay? So, here's the parent didn't register, the Clinton Global Initiative didn't register. Who is the head of the FBI in November of 2008?
It's Rummy Mueller.
That was whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. So, again, this historic presidency, Bill Clinton's mouthing off about holding these meetings, announcing he's going to have a meeting in Hong Kong. Let's go to the next page. Okay, now they have to plan this thing. Okay? And remember the concern about the Clinton Foundation. One of the concerns is that Bill Clinton will use the Clinton Foundation as an excuse to get paid personally for speeches and side deals and other things like that. Okay, so here from WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks has not been contested. No one's come back and said this
just thrown in jail.
Well, no one's come back and said the substance of what the Podesta WikiLeaks is wrong. No one has said that yet.
Yeah.
Okay, on the 22nd of November 2008, here's an email chain that says CGI Asia is 2nd, 3rd December. Bill leaves on November 30th, gets back on the 6th. Well, if the thing is over on the 3rd, why does he get back on the 6th? You don't, come back from Hong Kong via the moon. You should be able. Oh, the reason is he's got 3 Harry Walker speeches, which is the agency after CGI. Doug Bann didn't tell me where and the dates. And then somebody adds in the chain 3 Harry Walker speeches. Malaysia, we're going to get to in a second, Hong Kong, and Singapore. So in other words, Bill is gone between the time that Barack Obama was elected and the time he was inaugurated. Bill Clinton gets on a jumbo jet, goes over to Hong Kong, is palling around doing who knows what, who knows who paid for that trip, whether it was a foundation or a sponsor or whatever. He certainly didn't pay for it. And after he gets done with his Gab Grifter Fest in Hong Kong, he then goes to Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Singapore where he gets paid money. That is illegal inurement right there. That is a crime. to do this. Okay, it's certainly not reported properly in the Clinton Foundation filings for 2007, 8, 9, or whatever.
Because he's traveling at the expense of the foundation.
And getting paid
picking
personally.
up this extra money. He should definitely make it a totally separate trip, or there's...
No, it's strictly forbidden. He can't, I mean, he cannot give a speech in Malaysia about his good works for the Clinton Global Initiative.
And get paid
He
for
get
the
paid.
speech. Got it.
And if he does, God forbid, get paid, it has to be disclosed in the Clinton Foundation.
And give the money to the foundation, not take it himself.
Yeah, well, there's a deeper question, but yeah, I mean, it's just flagrant. And here it is, November 22nd, 2008. Barack is not yet president. Mueller is head of the FBI. And so we have an email chain on the 28th of November, 2008. Interestingly, one of the people on the chain is Bruce R. Lindsay at AOL.com. Now,
He's using AOL.
which I suspected he would have been using. And when we go back through the work that the FBI has done to date, there's an address you need to search on. All of his emails. Because I bet you there are a lot of incriminating emails involving Bruce R. Lindsay at AOL.com, and I bet you he has alias emails. But back then, maybe he thought he was crafty. So here, this is saying, remember, Valerie Jarrett has signed the MOU, okay? This on the 16th of November, 2008. This is an email on the 28th saying, here's the first draft for discussion of the MOU on the 28th of November, 2008. So who wrote in there November 16th, 2008? This is 12 days before this email goes out to the various and sundry parties. Here's the first draft. I've separated this draft from the personal agreements Bill Clinton is making and will be sending. Now, the MOU says that the MOU is the only agreement relating to the foundation, so that's a lie. What are these personal agreements of Bill Clinton? And it says it's similar to what Powell did. Now, Colin Powell didn't have a gigantic foundation when he was secretary. His wife, Alma, was not running a gigantic foundation, nor had she previously been a head of state. Here we have a different situation where it calls for strict regulation. People are making noise about it. And anyway, this goes out in the morning. Podesta responds with corrections here. And he says, I haven't caught up with this lawyer, Todd Stern, we're going to get to in a second. The question is, who's representing Valerie Jarrett? This is a memorandum that's designed to help the Clintons. Doesn't seem to be protecting Jarrett or the Obama administration or the American taxpayer at all. And why would the incoming president of the United States say, you know what, I want to make sure that the Clintons are well looked after before I become president, because I wouldn't want to have to prosecute my political rival, as president. Why would I want to do that? Eliminating competition for Michelle and my family and cementing my role as the most powerful. I wouldn't want to do that. I'm going to let John Podesta and this Wilmer Hale guy, he's now at Brookings, which is obviously
That was at the top of the list of...
swampiness.
Well, it's a think tank.
Yeah.
God.
So this fellow was the guy who's, in theory, protecting the interests of Barack Obama, but he's the chief climate negotiator for Barack Obama. That went well.
Climate negotiator? Who's he negotiating with the climate?
The climate, exactly, with Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, maybe don't rain today. What can we do to make you...
You get Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Get her. She's pretty good with the smoke signals and stuff like that.
Climate negotiator.
Of course, he's also a visiting lecturer at Yale Law School. So anyway...
Is he related to the Stern family that the business school at NYU is named after?
No, it could be, but that's, as you know, a common name. Yeah. Anyway, so here's clear evidence after November 16th, 2008, that work was being performed on this MOU, but the one person whose interests were not being protected is Barack Obama's. So we go to the next page. Okay. Now, a public announcement is made on December 1st, 2008. Again, Bill Clinton is not President of the United States, nor is Barack Obama, but George Bush is. And Bill Clinton, this announcement announced that Bill Clinton, President Clinton, is taking the following steps. How do you take steps having anything to do with the Clinton Foundation when you are not an executive, you're not a trustee, you're not a director, you're not an agent, you're nothing? It's named after, and the entity is supposed to be independent from its creator, Bill Clinton. But this says, to great fanfare, where are all these journalists, investigative journalists, jumped all over Trump? They were trying to make sure that, there was a challenge to a recount. Then they wanted the Electoral College people to vote their conscience. Then they wanted, where are those people who are so against President Trump? Why did they look at this and say, now hang on, how is President Clinton doing anything like this? And, this is Bill Clinton saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, now I'm going to incorporate CGI separately from the foundation. Well, the foundation doesn't exist legally. And, to admit that you're going to have to separate them is to admit to the world that all this work you did in 5, 6, and 7 with the CGI was illegitimate. And Clinton's going to do this. They're not going to host events outside the U.S. Well, they announced this on the 1st of December. The next day they do an event in Hong Kong. Last I checked, that's outside the United States, right? Except for this thing I'm doing right now, which don't look too closely why I'm doing it, I'm not going to do anything outside of the U.S. Then, he talks about, in this announcement, it's going to continue to do work with money from foreign governments. Sweden, Norway, France, and Great Britain are listed. How come there's no information about the grants of Sweden, Norway, France, and Great Britain in 11 years of tax forms, one of which was never filed, 10 that were filed? How come there's no information about these government grants? Okay, and then I love this one. This sounds so, what a concession. To whatever extent there are conflict of interest concerns, you mean like with every aspect of this? Raised about such potential contributions relating to Senator Clinton's service as secretary, they will be conveyed to Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation for appropriate action. In other words, you say to the criminals, we caught you, why don't you two decide what your punishment should be, and that'll be fine. And then the criminals come back and say, well, we don't think we should be punished. Okay, that sounds sensible.
Yeah.
This is absurd on its face that this would go out. And, none of the investigative journalists want to spend any time looking at this. So I hope Durham is looking at this, because this is, to me, beginning to explain what they're trying to cover up. They're trying to cover up the bold incompetence, the willing incompetence of Mueller, the CIA, the Justice Department, the IRS, under Bush, to see this burgeoning, laundry and corruption engine that took off really in January, February of 2001.
But are you being sarcastic when you say incompetence? It can't be incompetence. It's
I'm being sarcastic.
Complicity, right?
Yeah. So if we go to the next.
They're doing it.
Okay. So this is, an actual excerpt. And I'm going to have a hard time with this without laughing, so I'll put the glass down. So this says on the 2nd, Bill Clinton is in Hong Kong, mind you. His wife's going to be the Secretary of State. That's announced on the 1st. Bill Clinton says, from Hong Kong, bringing together all these people, and he's hosting it, he says. It's going to focus specifically on Asia, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if we hit this here, Jason, just this for a second, so people can do this at their leisure. This is the press release itself. You can X out the illegal contribution request. It goes on and on and on. If we've got this commitment and that commitment. And of course, all this activity didn't just happen by accident. They've been at this for a long time. There are email chains, there's agreements, there's correspondence, there are complaints, and all this kind of stuff. Have we ever seen any of those emails? No, because any investigation done of mishandling classified information, of course, picks up after Hillary is confirmed. Doesn't investigate this crucial period where all the grifters are going to be rushing in to try to get something out of the Obamas and the Clintons through this Clinton Global Initiative. But there's a long list of commitments to action. Let's stay on this page, and I'll let you read this one, Jason, to see whether you can read the whole sentence.
This thing here?
This one right here. This is an actual commitment to action.
The World Toilet Organization, along with its partners, we can only imagine who they are, is committing $1.2 million US to expand access for more than 750 million people in Cambodia and India to basic sanitation.
So let's stop there. 750 million people. We're going to spend 1.2 million to expand access for 750 million people.
It's just one big giant toilet for 1.2
That's
million.
like 8 cents a person.
Well,
Or 7 cents or whatever, 6.5 cents a person. I mean,
Doesn't seem
what are
like
you
a lot.
doing? What exactly are you doing? You look up this World Toilet Organization, it's the last thing in the, and I can see that actually clean sanitation is extremely important, that it's, you want to change.
the name is poorly chosen.
Yeah.
Though.
Well, in addition, the gentleman person who set this thing up is, I think, also created the World Toilet University. Which,
How about, why not World Sanitation Organization?
I don't know.
Would
Why
be
not, like,
better, right?
Yeah, but is this something that, really, is this properly capitalized? Or what the hell was this toilet bowl guy? Probably heard about the toilet bowl server system in Chappaqua. I said, we
is
can
an
do that.
opportunity, yeah.
And we can bug that.
Yeah.
Right? So at the time of this meeting, the audit was due by an accounting firm, and unfortunately they didn't have a real accounting firm, but it was supposed to be completed by the 17th of November 2008, 2 weeks roughly before Bill is over in Hong Kong taking commitments of action from a toilet organization. And so that's not ready. We've shown you that William J. Clinton Foundation never registered in New York, therefore it could never truthfully register in Hong Kong or China or anywhere else. We've shown this to you before. The speeches that Bill has gotten, let's hit the CNBC link. The speeches that, next one down.
Next one.
Yeah. The speeches that Bill Clinton got, speech payments were a small portion of the action. If you go into here, a document released by WikiLeaks, you'll see this famous "I'm a dumb fuck" memo written by Doug Band to lawyers, or to John Podesta. You'll see the attachment, and we hit that. This is, let's write a letter to lawyers, to members of the New York bar, to the world's expert, one of them supposedly, on New York nonprofit corporations. These are two lawyers at Simpson Thacher. Let's misspell the name of the firm, putting a T in it, when no T.
It's pretty
and this I would like to tell you, this is a memo to lawyers who are supposed to actually, before the election, a year before the re-election, I'm going to send a letter to lawyers and to the Clintons and McCall, the movers behind the Clintons.
Why would you send something that says attorney-client privilege and then copy it to? Are all of these people represented by the same attorney? Maybe.
Possibly, but again,
Seems
it's
like
not
the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, it's not smart at all. And, I mean, nothing about what Doug Band has done in his life is all that smart, it seems to me. But here's a long memo indicting himself. We go through several pages down, Jason. There's one where he talks about, it's almost at the end, I think. Like there, yeah, further down, I think. Yeah, here, right here. Well, people can look through this at their leisure. There's a section of this letter which talks about how Justin and Doug Band have been instrumental using the foundation for Bill Clinton's for-profit activities. It's like, I would like in this memo to lawyers to admit that we have been involved breaking the law to the tune of over $100 million. But I'd like to put that in a memo so that you can know just how much of a dumb fuck I am.
Well, he's got to memorialize it.
And he's a lawyer, no less.
Not all lawyers are smart, I've learned.
We found one who definitely is not.
Yeah, I found more than one, Charles.
Yeah, and so then this BKD, we've got to get the worst accounting firm in the world. We'll use them, of course, to do a, quote, audit for 2007 that is hopelessly inaccurate. Does it remotely come close to complying with the applicable regulations, including trying to make sure that we are, when we say it's a charity, that it is, in fact, a charity registered in the states where it's operating. Then they get it wrong in 7, and then they say, you know what, because we want to be as to accounting, as dumb as to accounting as Band is to law, we want to be that accounting firm. So they then do the 2008 audit correcting 2007, but doing it so inaccurately. And all this period, mind you, this is Barack Obama's, getting outfitted for his new presidential wardrobe and preparing to move into the White House, and his kids are all excited in their party. All during this time frame, all this stuff is hopelessly wrong, and agents of an entity not registered in New York send written documents across state lines using the mail, which are in the files in New York, California, Michigan, lying, saying, we need extra time. An audit is issued, a fake audit is issued on December 12th, 2008. These letters go out after December 12th, in December, but after December 12th, 2008, saying to the regulators in New York, California, Michigan, we can't give you our paperwork on this Clinton Fraud Foundation because our auditors haven't finished their work when their work was finished on December 12th, the effective date of the MOU. That's when the audit was finished.
So they just lied.
They're in the business of lying. So here they're over in China, where I'm told when you travel in China, like in Russia, every email communication, every device that you have, you should assume it is being intercepted. Everything that you say, you're going to be spied on in China. Bill decides, I didn't get in trouble as president for maybe taking too much illegal money from Charlie Tree and John Wang and all these suspicious Chinese types, and Riyadi and all these people. I didn't get in trouble for that. So for my first international trick, I'm going to have the Clinton Grifter Initiative hang out in Hong Kong. I mean, it's not like it's part of communist China. Oh, it is part of communist China. I mean, it's not like where all the bigwigs in China hang out. Oh, it is where all the bigwigs in China try to get away.
We got a picture of Barack Obama being outfitted for his new presidency, Charles. This just arrived hot off the press. This from Sidney Blumenthal.
That's funny. Anyway, so the fair question is, how much leverage by 2008 did foreign powers have against the incoming Obama administration, specifically against the Clintons, for their decades of grifting and criminal behavior around the world? Fair question. So what kind of a person would you like to put in charge of this Hong Kong meeting? Would you like to get somebody who's been accused of fraud? Make him the star person underwriting the Hong Kong meeting? Jason?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let's meet that guy. I mean, this article that I'm excerpting here from the New York Times came out the 4th or 5th of December 2008, i.e. before Hillary was even remotely confirmed, right? Before there were any real hearings on this. He speaks before 3,000 people, so Bill does, in Kuala Lumpur. He supposedly gets $200,000 for the speech in his pocket. Okay, so that means this grifter, Sekhar, sells tickets to 3,000 people. Probably there's a receiving line, extra tickets to get next.
Jam some money in his hand.
Well, this Sekhar guy looked ahead. He said, I could probably charge 3,000 people a lot of money. We'll give Bill 200. I'll take the difference. So that's how these grifters work. And if you look at the guy, do we know anybody? Have we run across any young person who made a lot of money and then decided, I'm going to devote my life to charity now? John Hope Bryant, for example.
Oh.
Here's a 40-year-old guy who's supposedly the chief executive of something called the Petra Group. For this article done by Don Von Natta, who is Jeff Gerth's book writing partner in the book about Hillary that came out in 2007, a New York Times guy, he has, in this New York Times story, an interview with somebody saying, I believe, this person believes that Sekhar is using Bill Clinton, that he's basically a con artist. He had to return $900,000 to Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis, the actor?
Yeah. And then, in the same period, this long stuff in red basically says that a member of the royal family, Tunku Imran, was chairman of Sekhar's company, but stepped down because there were too many negative stories. This has happened just after Bill's in Malaysia collecting $200,000 from this fraud artist, and nobody on the Senate staff is saying, now wait a minute, the Clinton Foundation is obviously a problem. They just went to Hong Kong. Look how they're behaving now, right? Bill's over there in Hong Kong. He collects 3 speeches. The one we know about so far is an obvious scam artist. So there are no controls of the Clinton Foundation. There's no controls as between the incoming administration and the Clinton Foundation. And by the way, In the MOU, there's no discussion of a Clinton Global Initiative meeting in Hong Kong, even though the effective date of the MOU is December 12th. So it's like, the MOU is not even Swiss cheese. It's certainly not cheese.
It's Jell-O.
It's ridiculous. It's Hong Kong Screwy. Right? And so how could folks around in the FBI have missed all this? Right? You have a con artist paying another con artist, Bill Clinton, $200,000. Who knows what other stuff was paid and why monies were paid. I mean, $200,000 is a lot of money to give a con artist for a speech. And what was the speech about? If it was about the Clinton Foundation and its activities,
Should be free.
yeah, right. Anyway, so we go to the next page.
I mean, honestly, unless it's a speech about how to earn $500,000, that's a bad deal.
Right. So remember last time when we started talking about the testimony of Hillary Clinton, and we couldn't get to the page because it froze up in the last edition. So I excerpted from that page. These are excerpts from comments made by a senator who was concerned, the senator from Indiana, who was concerned about issues arising in potential conflicts between the Clinton Foundation and Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. This is a hearing on the 13th of January, so a month after they get back from the grifter meeting in Hong Kong. And it says here that there's been a review of how her service as Secretary can be reconciled with sweeping global activities of President Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. Okay, what did these senators actually do in their review of Hillary Clinton? I want to see that file. Who did the diligence? How come you couldn't see that there was no Clinton Foundation? Right? I mean, there could not have been any serious diligence done. And did nobody on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee say, wait a minute, this MOU is a piece of garbage. It's not going to protect anybody. Now, the senator's testimony, the core of the problem is that governments, foreign government entities, may perceive the Clinton Foundation as a means to gain favor with the Secretary of State. You think? You think that's really the core of the issue? Well, I mean, this was stated on January 13th, 2009. How come nobody did anything about this? Yeah, how come nobody bothered to check whether the Clinton Foundation was a thing?
I mean, is the answer that they're just bribing all of them, or?
I guess. I think the answer is possibly they said, look, Obama won. Being president's a pain in the ass. I mean, Hillary said she wanted to be president.
I thought she already is. She won.
She's always been president.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, actually being a president is a lot of work of the United States. You've got to take
want to do that.
Constant incoming shit, and you get to fly around the world. But you've got to at least pretend that you care about all this stuff. What a great life to just be able to fly around the world, take the international piece of the pie. All the corrupt money is going to be international. Most of it's going to be international. Domestic corruption will be easier to track. International, not so much. And so she gets that deal. And I think the group, the Podestas, the Soroses, the big money around Obama are like, this is great. Now, we have, for sure we know we can get our international deals done crooked. We have to pay the Clintons some money, but we can get those things done and no one in the US is ever going to question us. But this is testimony. We need to go back over this and ask specifically of the staffs of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, what did you do to study this Clinton Foundation? Because you should have found in the first 10 seconds that it didn't exist. Were you told not to study it? Right? And then it says, in this testimony, the senator says, President Clinton is deservedly proud of the Clinton Foundation's good work in addressing HIV and AIDS, using adulterated medicine to kill people.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back at this, and this is why I say there's a tremendous amount in the public record. We now know the truth. We know that a dirty deal was struck between the Clintons and the Obamas and involving other rich donors probably to install this Obama presidency, which obviously had issues with it, severe enough that Obama would put up with this crap, and let this stay in place for 8 long years when the parties around the Obamas and the Clintons could steal as much money as possible. And so we know this was done with malice aforethought. This was not an accident. So we need to go back over this ground. Now, what would happen if we went back over some of that ground? Let's go to the next page.
You claim forethought, Charles. I don't even see 3 thoughts here.
All right. So what I've done here, and this is for certain people, I will not reveal who, but are very interested in this. There's an entity called Pangea, or I think is the way it's pronounced, Global AIDS Foundation.
Wasn't it the mass continent of everything?
Right. And so there's a guy, Dr. Eric Gooseby, who was plucked out of this position at Pangea to be the, I think, Global AIDS Coordinator in the State Department. And beginning in 2013-14 is one of the independent directors of the Bill, Hillary and Chelsea Clinton Foundation that doesn't exist.
So the State Department is I mean, the Clinton Foundation is kind of merged with the State Department.
Exactly.
And the State Department is kind of merged with the CIA. And last week we had a viewer who said, I don't know if this was on your show, but somebody suggested that we're not going to get anywhere with this because the Clinton Foundation is a CIA proprietary.
We're going to get somewhere with this, I think. So in this declaration, which is very useful, this stuff is in the public domain. You can't remove it from the public domain at this stage. Here is what the Pangea people said they did in the year ended June 30, 2003. They say they worked in collaboration with lowercase t, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. That entity, there is no such thing. And they did work on behalf of the South African Ministry of Health in a plan that was approved in November 2003. This is according to Pangea. So here we have, and they also worked with the Rwandan government. So we've told you before that a foundation cannot act as an agent of a foreign government. And if Bill was running this, acting as an agent of a foreign government, how come Bill didn't register with FARA? Right, if he was running this, and beyond that, Hillary was a senator in 2003, and her family members are not supposed to be agents of a foreign government. So you look at this disclosure and you say, this guy, Dr. Eric Gooseby, it's an open question whether he's as dumb as Doug Band. I mean, why would you do this? I mean, did nobody in Pangea check to see whether, the correct name of the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation and ask to protect Pangea, whether or not the Clinton Foundation was authorized for international work? It's not complicated, okay? So here these two, it's an insult to drunks, stumbling drunks, get together. Pangea writes this 990 after June 2003, expands upon it in 2004, and says, now we're working with something called the William Jefferson Clinton Foundation. There's no such entity. Never has such an entity, the William full name Jefferson Clinton Foundation. There's no such thing. Certainly by June 30th, 2004, working in South Africa and Rwanda and with the national government of China. How are they doing that in 2004? How is the Clinton Foundation doing that?
Why have we never before heard of it referred to as the national government of China?
I don't know. This is just the way Gooseby writes, or his people write. So here you're seeing a lot of activities in 2004. Let's go to the next page. Okay, does it continue? It continues. Now it says Pangea began working in China in May as a partner of this new thing called the William Jefferson, full name, Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, which did not exist as a charity, but working in China on that. Okay, and it doesn't. When I first read the Clinton Foundation 990s, I came up with this thought that what they are, they're word torrents. They throw words, sustainable, climate change, public this, and you look at it and you say, well, they must know what they're talking about. It's just rubbish.
A lot of people who speak that way.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, all these are words and they sound important, but this doesn't make sense as a sentence.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what the hell are you doing? So by 2006, their thinking had become clearer. Now they're working with the Clinton Foundation's HIV/AIDS initiative, again, that doesn't work, to assist China, South Africa, Rwanda, Bahamas, and Ukraine. Now, it's an odd collection. And when you think about it happens that I have been to every one of those countries except Rwanda. But I've been to a lot of countries. But the collection, when you're seeing through my list of priorities, I think as Pangea, based in San Francisco, I want to help the people of China who are thriving, in theory, according to the globalists who promote, this life under dictatorship really works well theory. South Africa, which is imploding, but not really poor. Rwanda, which is on the up and up. Bahamas, which is extremely rich compared to any of these countries. Small population, banking system, consumption is up at the 20,000 per person level.
Oh.
And Ukraine is also not that poor. How did these come together? Did they come together because, in the case of China and Ukraine and South Africa, did they come together because they were good places to do charity work, or places where they're relatively lawless? And if you want to smuggle stuff, including organs and drugs and cash and bribes,
Children.
these are places where you can roll that way. So here by 2007, they're saying, now they're calling it Chai again. They're assisting all these governments. And now they're rolling into Papua New Guinea. Now, mind you, the Clinton Foundation is taking money from Australia, big money, to go into Papua New Guinea, taking money from Unitaid beginning in 2007, lots of money. How do they keep track of where are all these agreements between Pangea and these governments and the Clinton Foundation? What are these agreements? Are they all MOUs, meaningless MOUs, or are they real agreements? And when you get through this word torrent of what they were doing in 2007, they say that the total amount of money they spent for this word torrent was $1.5 million. You see that in the lower right corner. So it's the first time they've accounted. They have all these great words. We did this, we did that, all these other things. But at the end of the day, all they spent is $1.5 million. Now, for $1.5 million, I submit that it's virtually impossible to do anything meaningful in all these different countries. Flying people around where you're contributing value. Could you send a clerk or even an executive to a bunch of these countries to live in hotel rooms and listen to other people tell you what they really did? Yeah, you could do that. But to roll up your sleeves and do anything meaningful for that amount of money, it's impossible. So we go to the next page.
On that kind of scale, yeah.
Yeah. Then they say in 2008, now it's kind of shifting. All of a sudden, Pangea is working with China and Ukraine, focusing on injection drug using, and they have an acronym, IDU, populations infected with HIV/AIDS. So these are...
That's a very lawyerly thing to do.
Yeah.
Just come up with that kind of abbreviation for anything.
But they're spending now injection drug using populations with HIV/AIDS in detention centers in the Yunnan province.
Really narrowing it
In the
down.
Yunnan province. Now they're spending $1.3 million on that. Now, we're going to get into the Yunnan province when we close in a second. Then they say by 2009, June 30th, 2009, the same thing, detention centers. And now the Gates Foundation is getting involved. But the amount of money is going down. They spent $1.5 million in 7, $1.3 million in 8, and now $830,000 in 2009. Now let's just think through how absurd these claims are. On the 29th of September 2009, William J. Clinton Foundation, an entity we've told you that was never registered, organized properly anywhere in the world, somehow manages to incorporate Clinton Health Access Initiative, Inc. That's not done properly. Bylaws for Clinton Health Access Initiative are not put together until December of 2011, according to revelations provided by the government of New Zealand to one of our contacts in New Zealand. So we have official government evidence. The only final copy of the bylaws are dated early in December 2011. So this Clinton Health Access Initiative functions, from 9 with there's no 990 return for 2009, a crucial year for Clinton Health Access Initiative. And there are no filings in the appropriate jurisdictions around the United States and around the world for that entity. So it's just it's a fiction, this Clinton Health Access Initiative. It's a legal matter, it's a fiction. And they never filed the 990 for this, I call it New Chai here. BKD, the firm that, I don't know, we have to come up with a new phrase, excuse me for this. BKD, I think, stands for Beyond Knowing Dick. It's ridiculous.
That's very well done, Charles.
I mean, they select that firm to work simultaneously as the auditor, i.e. to be the auditor for the main foundation and the tax preparer for these supposed charities, both of them. So they're all in, they're conflicted everywhere. They're the auditor for the parent, tax preparer for the parent. Auditor for the sub, tax preparer for the, and they get everything wrong. I mean, at a minimum, you would have multiple firms in this. You'd have multiple unconnected trustees involved with this, multiple letters of legal letters. They do none of this. And this is in Barack Obama's first full year as president, just after he collects his richly deserved Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
So
Another corrupt organization.
Yeah, speaking of that. So the Clinton Foundation also gave, now this is a legal term, a proprietary interest to Bill Clinton. What is a proprietary interest? Proprietary interest is a legal matter I understand, is any kind of advantage or edge that you give somebody. And so the advantage or edge that Bill got out of this is he was appointed chairman for life of Clinton Health Access Initiative, Inc., which you can't do that in a charity normally. He was given the right to have all of his expenses reimbursed with no limits on travel, what's reasonable, should you be taking this trip, should you claim the trip has anything to do with the Clinton Foundation. And so you could go through the known record and you could say, obviously, in this restructuring in 2009, it's very clear. The Clintons grifted the Obamas. They got Eric Holder, who was a Clinton loyalist, in as Attorney General. They had sway over the IRS. They had Lois Lerner in the charity. And they said, listen, yeah, we lied to you, Barack. Yeah, you're the president. But over here, do you want us to open up this bag over here and share it with the public in 2009 and 10? Is that what you want us to do, Barack? So they had some kind of leverage. Now, what is that leverage? I mean, we don't want to ask Bob Mueller to find it, because the only thing he could find is a single mole, and that with a lot of help. Real people in the FBI, there's enough in this stinking, smoking hulk of a fake foundation around the world to say that it's a complete fraud, and the regulators who allowed this thing to mushroom. And by the way, I've just focused here on Pangea. We could do the same exercise with multiple other repeat donors to the Clinton Foundation. Why would the Barack Obama administration allow these frauds to flourish and not to be punished, while at the same time using Lois Lerner and people in the Justice Department and others in the IRS? Why would they target conservatives? And the reason is because they're crooked to the core. And this lies at the heart of draining the swamp, exposing this exercise. Unless this is fully exposed, Donald Trump and his people will never be successful in draining the swamp. That's the negative way of saying it. Positive way to say it, once you focus on this,
swamp drains
the swamp
automatically.
is Swamp Drano. That could be one of our new...
Swamp Drano would be a great product, Joe.
Get a bottle of Swamp Drano. Anyway, so if we go to the next slide.
Swamp Roto-Rooter.
So here, this is in a press release, just if you could hit the link here. And up will pop.
How come it didn't ask us for money?
Because they knew. Now, there's no such thing as something called Clinton Foundation in New York. There is a fictitious name right to use Clinton Foundation in Arkansas, but not internationally. Here's a press release, September 7th, 2005, talking about Bill Clinton's visit to KUN Ming, and we'll get to this later. But this is the source of what I'm now going to tell you. If we go to the inside to the slide, they recite in here how the Clinton Foundation became involved in China. Supposedly, the king and queen of signing useless documents signed a memorandum of understanding with the Chinese Ministry of Health on 29 April 2004. Where is that document? Okay?
It's in China.
Let's see that document. All right? It's filed under T. T in China, we put it under the T.
Right.
And they supposedly by August. Now, there is no Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative lawfully constituted as a charity by the 29th of April or by any date here. So they write a training manual, which gets approved in January. So where's the record of that? They set up this Sino-US, I don't know how you pronounce this, Physician Training Center. The same day, they're signing with the National Archives a document stating that we are a public charity authorized to focus on housing presidential records in Little Rock and nothing else. The same day that they signed that thing with the National Archives, they're signing an agreement, somebody is, in remote China, to do something And so, both agreements are wrong. The one that was signed with the archives was wrong. The one that was signed in China that was wrong. And who was the head of the FBI then?
Mueller.
You got that. So then they expand in February 23rd. Another MOU is signed. Then they have a fellowship the same day. Some fellowship is announced. On the 7th of June 2005, this fellow, Fred Eichner, who's one of the biggest donors to Democrats, and has given as much as $25 million to these frauds, the Clinton Foundation, he announces that through his charity, which is not allowed to do work outside of Illinois and I think Indiana, that he's going to fund the biggest expenditures by far of his grants to fund activities in China. So why would he be doing that? And then Bill Clinton goes out to China September 9th, 2005 to look at projects supposedly being taken care of by this Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative that doesn't exist. So why all this focusing and harping on China? The article that we started with that you're not supposed to think about in the Washington Examiner is an article from November of 2008, which traces through then the evolution of organ harvesting in China. And when Bill Clinton, when he's criticized, one of the standards he likes to use in thinking through whether he's done good here is, I've done more good than harm.
Right.
That is rubbish.
Yeah.
That is rubbish. There are people out there, we've seen it with the distribution of adulterated HIV/AIDS drugs that are principally sold by Indian companies, but the active ingredient of these adulterated drugs comes from China.
Right.
We're seeing, this charity being used as a way to distribute these adulterated drugs, and who knows how many Africans and people in the countries that receive this medicine were killed. We're learning that organ harvesting is something that can happen. We know that drug trafficking and human trafficking happens and all. And so when you have a false front foundation and smart fraudsters figure out that Bill Clinton would not want to have to admit that Jason Goodman and Charles Hertel have been right about this all day long. So that means to the extent the smart fraudsters get stuck into the Clinton Foundation, they know that Bill will run interference into any plan to get to the bottom of what they've been doing, maybe harvesting organs or selling adulterated drugs or just straight up stealing money, raping, plundering, etc. They know that Bill is going to have to put the kibosh on any investigations, and that Obama as well will have to do that, because to let it proceed, you'd have to admit that he had been gulled and he'd been duped.
Charles, what was the heart surgery that Bill Clinton had? Valve replacement or bypass?
I don't know which one.
Because someone was commenting earlier that, didn't David Rockefeller have 6 heart transplants? I have always doubted that claim. We've never seen any actual evidence of that. I think it would be difficult to find evidence of that because it starts to delve into like private medical information. Yeah. But I've spoken to cardiologists about this, and there are definitely people that have, a lot of people live for a very long time with a human heart transplant. 20 years is not uncommon to live with a heart transplant. Some people have even had a second heart transplant when the first transplant fails for some reason, but the rest of the person is healthy. And I think there might even be some people who have had 3, but it's a very low survival rate for a triple transplant. And I just don't think it's possible that any human could survive 4, 5, certainly not 6 heart transplants. There are also other people, including Carroll Shelby, who's dead now, but I interviewed, who was he was the oldest living double organ transplant recipient at the time. I believe he had received a heart and either a liver or a kidney. But these type of transplant surgeries, I had a relative who had a kidney, which is the father of my cousin's wife, so not really my relative, but had a liver transplant, and that is major surgery. You're never healthy again after a major organ transplant like that. So the notion that somebody would have 6 doesn't seem correct to me. But yeah, they're harvesting the organs. And I mean, you were talking about that prison. They're just getting, this fits their MO with the blood transfusion stuff they did in Canada. Just get like the sickest, most, unhealthy, kill them and nobody will know or care, and take the organs and send them to somebody.
And going into disaster zones after tsunami, after Haiti, after Katrina, et cetera. So, this is something, I think it's fair to say that across the planet, people are justifiably concerned from a right-leaning perspective, from an apolitical perspective, from a left-leaning perspective, about whether government can be trusted, why we're spending all this money supposedly on government, what are we getting for all this money, how do all these people who started with nothing devote themselves to lives of public service, suddenly they have $65 million book deals and they are buying mansions in Martha's Vineyard and Chappaqua and Washington, whatever. And we just sit here and say, there couldn't be anything untoward with that. I mean, there's no one's paying, that kind of money to Barack Obama and the Clintons and the Bushes and others so that, to overlook crimes. I mean, that's not the kind of stuff we do in civilized society. I mean, I think that's basically what's going on here. And we have this wave election coming here in November 2020. We have a man who knows how to rally. We have somebody who knows how to get things across the line here, but has got an increasingly shrinking window to convince the skeptics like me that he's going to get serious about attempting to drain the swamp. I mean, he has the evidence. This is show 199, beyond the many other interviews and things that I've been doing since March of 2015. It's not like there's a lack of evidence. What there appears to be so far is a lack of will.
Right.
And I think Donald Trump and his team should be concerned about demonstrating the requisite will. I know that if and I'll never be President of the United States, I don't want to be in that kind of position, but if I were in his position, and it were, hypothetically speaking, January 4th, 2020, and I had this election coming up and I wanted to win it, I'd say, we took out Soleimani, rightly or wrongly. Let's take out Comey, not kill him. Let's not kill him.
Just do a drone strike on his Star Wars Lego collection. It's like, today the Imperial leader was taken out.
It's time. This guy Comey and Brennan are obviously playing, and this Justice Security Organization and this lawfare group are playing as if they know how to stall to win in November 2020. That's the way they're playing. And we're not talking here about minor crimes. We're not. People like to say these are just registration problems, every charity. No, we're talking about killing people with adulterated drug medicine. We're talking about We're talking about harvesting organs, and maybe trading in them.
Manipulating investigations. Manipulating people in the IRS, the DOJ.
This is serious stuff, and it's people in both parties, and it needs to be fully exposed. And I hope we're not down a track where we'll just get the little people. But there's a number of our good friends have been sending out to me daily messages about this prosecution happening and that. And they're nice. Some of them are in the 10 million range, but we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars here.
Andrew McCabe is yapping on CNN. Hillary Clinton is sending out dumb tweets. They should all be, if not in jail, sweating somewhere in a lawyer's office thinking, what are we going to do?
Yeah, let's hope
and they're not. Trump's got to drain the swamp. I hope he will. But Charles, with that, I think we're out of time. I want to thank everybody for joining us today on this special edition of Sunday with Charles on Saturday. And I really want to thank, Charles, the sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth. A lot of people have been discovering Subscribestar.com. Some people are liking that better than Patreon. You're going to get access to the same exact sponsor-exclusive library of videos that are coming out daily. Every week there's new videos that you can only see on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. So in addition to making it possible for free shows like Sunday with Charles, you're going to keep the show sustainable. You're going to get access to tons of information. I want to thank everybody who's made that possible and encourage people who are watching every week. If you have not yet become a sponsor, now is the time. 2020 is the year that the social engineers are really digging in, trying to deplatform Crowdsource the Truth. I was going to do a whole video about this, Charles, but just want to let people know, because this show gets a lot of views. The social engineers, they did a very unique live stream the day after Christmas, I believe, during which one of the most persistent engineers put in a little message saying, #GayOpsEscalation. And I don't know if you're familiar with that term. It has nothing to do with sexual orientation. Gay ops is a hacker term I think it comes from the anonymous hacker group, and it literally describes a conspiracy to defame, harass, and deplatform someone in social media, which is exactly what I've been alleging in my defense of these hashtag fake lawsuits. And here they are doing live streams admitting that they're going to escalate their operations to try to deplatform Crowdsource the Truth. So the best thing that people can do if they want to counteract that is to join us on Subscribestar and Patreon. And have a great weekend, everybody. We'll be back with Sunday with Charles next week, and I'll see everybody soon. Thanks for watching.